Today we're going to be talking about the U.S. involvement in Vietnam, so kind of like our beginning involvement in this conflict. So you can see our essential question there is, was the U.S. involvement in Vietnam justified? We're going to be focusing on the beginning of the war. You do need to take notes for this, so if you haven't already done so, go ahead and write the title and the question on your notes and today's date. As a reminder, you do not have to write every word on the slide, but there's additional things I'll be talking about which you should add to your notes. So we need to back up a little bit and talk about the relationship between France and Vietnam. It doesn't even involve us. So if you notice the date, 1941, that is also during World War II. So World War II started in Europe in 1939. So communist and nationalists in Vietnam wanted their independence from France. So they were a colony of France. We keep seeing that idea of imperialism over and over again. So a European nation controlling another nation. Vietnam wants their independence. France is a little busy in 1941, mainly being occupied by Nazi Germany, so they're unable to keep control of Vietnam. After the war is over, France is able to regain control of part of Vietnam, just the southern half. And that's going to become important as we go through like US involvement in Vietnam because the country is divided into the north and the south. So the map on the right, you can see the southern portion of Vietnam and that kind of green color. That's the portion that France was able to regain control of after World War II. The part in pink, they never regained control. Ho Chi Minh, who you see pictured here on the left, is or was a leader of the Viet Minh. That term, Viet Minh, is going to be important for you. And that is a group of Vietnamese communists. So we know during the Cold War, which the Vietnam War takes place during, focuses on communism and our fear of communism. So we see that there is a leader in North Vietnam that promotes communism in Vietnam. He's also making promises to the South that like he is going to help them get their independence from France and he's going to bring communism to the southern part of the country as well and reunite Vietnam so that it's not divided. This causes war to break out between Vietnam, North Vietnam, and the French. So eventually a meeting is held to determine what is going to happen with Vietnam. We have fighting between the North and the South. We have the French backing the South, the North making promises to the South. Like it's kind of a mess. So at this meeting, and you'll notice the date 1954. So this is after World War II is over. This is definitely during the Cold War. The first thing they agreed to in the Geneva Accords is a ceasefire, which means that both sides agree to stop fighting. And they temporarily divide Vietnam in half along the 17th parallel. That number, like, doesn't really matter, but you can see it's like right in here is where they split the country. So it becomes North Vietnam and South Vietnam. This was supposed to be temporary. So during the Geneva Accords, they had agreed that in 2 years' time, they would have an election where the people of Vietnam could choose their leader and then reunite the country. Ho Chi Minh, the guy we just talked about, the communist leader in the north, is the one who maintains control here. In the south, the person who is leader is Ngo Dinh Diem. And you can see his last name here, Diem. He's pro-West, so he's not communist. He supports like U.S. interests and trade and those kinds of things. So the U.S. is a big fan of Ngo Dinh Diem. We do not support Ho Chi Minh because Ho Chi Minh is a communist. So 1956 rolls around and Diem cancels the election. The reason he cancels the election is there was pretty clear signs that he was not going to win, that the Vietnamese people in both the North and the South were going to vote in Ho Chi Minh, which would have turned Vietnam into a communist nation reunited under Ho Chi Minh. So we were actually okay with this, and mainly because it prevented communism from spreading. So if you remember, our whole foreign policy at this time is based around the idea of containment. We don't want communism to spread. So if Diem canceling the election allows him to maintain control and therefore prevents communism from spreading, we're okay with that. It's a little hypocritical because we are a nation that has said for years that we just want to protect democracy and allow free elections in other countries, but like not if it isn't in line with what we care about. So free elections, yes, unless maybe a communist leader is going to be voted in, and then like no, it's fine if you control the elections. So honestly, like Vietnam is a pretty insignificant country on the global stage at this point. It's not like it's Britain, France, or the Soviet Union. They don't have a strong military. They don't have like a really globalized economy. So it might seem silly that the U.S. would even care about what's happening in Vietnam. The reason that the US government cares at this point is because of something called the domino theory, which is in red on your screen. This is a key idea for you. If you've ever set up dominoes or seen somebody do it on like YouTube, when you knock one of them over, they all fall like one after the other. So, this is what the US feared about nations falling to communism. In the visual, you can see China first falling. So China um, turned to communism under the leadership of Mao Zedong in the 1950s. So that country had fallen to communism. Korea had, at least North Korea, had also fallen to communism. We'd been involved in a conflict in Korea to try to prevent communism from spreading to South Korea. Now we see Vietnam. There's communism in the north. There's real potential of communism spreading to the south. So then we think like, okay, then Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Burma, India, it's going to be one right after the other. So the idea would be if we can stop Vietnam from falling, if we can stop this domino from falling, then we could potentially prevent the other countries from falling to communism as well. So the domino theory directly relates to our goal of containment. So to try to prevent the spread of communism. You should have a lot more written than just the words that are on the screen. Like, obviously, domino theory is not explained, but you definitely need that in your notes and then how it relates to Vietnam. So, our involvement begins in Vietnam in 1961. Again, just point of reference, Cold War occurs from 1946 to 1991. The Vietnam War, we are involved from 1961 till about 1973, though we never actually declare war in Vietnam. It's just like a military action for over a decade. So President Kennedy was president at the time, and he doesn't like officially send troops to Vietnam. He says that he's sending military advisors. So basically, the idea is that we're not going to fight this war. We're going to train the South Vietnamese. We're going to make sure that they know how to fight the war against the Northern communists. So we send advisors, and the number there is just to show you like how we escalated our involvement in a relatively short period of time. So less than 1,000 advisors in 1960. And then within 3 years, we were up to over 16,000 advisors. So the goal of these advisors, again, is to help train the South Vietnamese so that they can prevent communism from spreading. In addition to North Vietnam and Ho Chi Minh being a threat, there's also the Viet Cong. That's another really important term for you. You're going to hear about the Viet Cong or the VC a lot when we're talking about Vietnam. So in the South, there were communist supporters, so South Vietnamese that supported communism. Those are the Viet Cong or the VC. So Viet Minh are a part of the Ho Chi Minh group that are northern Vietnamese who support communism. Viet Cong are in the south trying to push the south to communism. So again, our foreign policy is to stop the spread of communism. Most of our focus is to help the South Vietnamese fight the VC so that communism doesn't take hold in South Vietnam. Things change a little bit for the US with the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which we're going to spend a bit of time talking about. You're going to look at some sources related to this. I'm just going to give you a little bit of context right now.